Hello and welcome. Now, Mark has been sitting on this island staring at palm trees for far too long, and as a result he's now invested in a company called MP Evans, who are producers of sustainable palm oil. Mark tells me that this is an excellent investment, but as a non-investor I am aware of the fact that some consumers and some product manufacturers are not entirely happy with palm oil. So this is an interesting one. Let's see what Mark has to say about it in this, episode 4 of The Desert Island Investor. Okay, Mark, so tell us all about MP Evans.
MP Evans, ticker symbol MPE, are a producer of sustainable Indonesian palm oil. And they've got plantations and both milling capacity, exclusively all in Indonesia. So it's not a small company. It's got a market capitalization of now 454 million. And it's relatively, I think, modestly valued. It's got a P of 7.7 and it's currently yielding about 5.1%. So those are numbers that I like. Profitability is good. On revenues of $326.9 million, it had profit. That's not operating profit, but profit of $78.4 million. That's slightly down on the previous year, where it had $91.9 million profit, but that included £12.6 million of a land sale that's non-repeating. So that's a little bit of a sketch, and it's got net cash of $33.5 million.
£454 million. That's quite a sizable business, Mark. Are they well known in the investment space?
Not really. It's one that I would describe as a bit of a ghost, really, because relative to its size, it doesn't seem to get a lot of coverage. I think a lot of people look at the blue chips or they go fishing for small caps, and very often there's companies in the middle that don't get probably their fair share of coverage. So perhaps that's something we can rectify today.
Established 150 years ago, so around an awful long time. What can you tell us about the history?
Yeah, well, they started off, I think, done a number of things. They've metamorphosized over the years. They've been involved in tea and rubber, and in later years, they farming in Australia, doing sheep and beef and even cotton and wool. But now they're exclusively involved in palm oil in one country, Indonesia. Previously, they did have some plantations out in Malaysia, but they found that Indonesia is by far a better place for them in that there's more plentiful of availability of labour, and it's cheaper labour, and also the soils are superior in Indonesia as well. So 150 years is a long time ago, and it's quite interesting in that they announced in the results that were out this week. I paid £8.18 earlier on this month. This is, I think I mentioned that when we did the first episode, I bought into MTI Wireless Group. That was my first investment, new holding in 4 years, and now within 2 months I've added another new stock. So I'm being positively promiscuous.
Okay, so I mean they own a lot of land, plantation land, I assume.
Yeah, they've got a total of, they manage 54,100 hectares, of which just slightly over 40,000 hectares they own outright, and the balance is that they manage the land of some small scheme holders, some scheme smallholders, Paul.
Right. Okay.
Another 14,000 hectares, something like that.
So that's the area where the palm trees exist, but they're processed. The actual palm oil is produced by mills, and do they own mills, or
they've got six of their own mills, and they intimated that they will be bringing a seventh one online, and that gives them. They're currently processing 96% of their own crop, and that gives them a lot more management of what's going through. They process that as a more advantageous price if they're processing their own crop, and as well for certification in order to be sustainable palm oil. It's the mills that have to be certified and not the plantations. So if you're owning the mill as well as the plantations, that gives you greater control. So they're currently, 64% of production is certified sustainable. That doesn't mean that the balance isn't sustainable. It's just certified. And they've said that their goal is to get that up to 100%.
Okay, a lot of employees?
Yeah, 11,700. So it's not insignificant. And a lot of these, live within the grounds of the business. So, they live cheek by jowl by the company.
So how's, you've come up with this heritage index rating before on a previous podcast. So how does Indonesia rank in that?
Yeah, well, it's ranked at number 60, which is classified as moderately free, and it's got a score of 63.5, and it's sandwiched between St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Mexico. And as a comparison, our score is 69.9 in the UK. So those are the 2023 rankings. So I think Indonesia is a progressive country, but it's slightly lower down the food chain, and they always you're looking for security, because if you look at the assets that they've got there in Indonesia, what you don't want is somebody one day just saying, right, we'll have this and we'll run it. Thanks very much. Governments have a little bit of a tendency to do some silly things, and one of them was actually in Indonesia when the Ukraine war broke out. Obviously, there's a massive spike in vegetable oils across the spectrum, and they immediately put an embargo on any exports of palm oil. Now that they've got more than enough to go around in Indonesia. And what resulted in that was that all the kind of storage capacity got filled up very quickly. So it only lasted a couple of weeks. But governments, as we've seen probably with COVID, they can come up with some knee-jerk reactions, and they can do some silly things. So, the concern is that that you've got an asset that's not going to be seized in any way. That you maintain control of it. I mean, it's just on something like this, palm oil. It is a commodity. So generally, that's not something I really like, in that they've got no control over the price. They can't really do anything other than limit supply, and they're that small that wouldn't have much of an impact. And most commodities that we talk about they're involved in extraction from the ground, whether it's oils or minerals or metals, and you're generally depleting that commodity over time. So you've got to factor that into your investment. At least this is a commodity that can repeat in perpetuity, technically. So, I'm going a little bit out of my general barriers for investment, but I think given the investment case and the fact that I've got a wideish portfolio, it's a move I'm prepared to make.
Now, the nature of the way that they employ people, they have a particular focus on, what is it called, ESG, is it, in terms of how they treat workers? What can you tell us about that?
Well, going through the report and some videos that I've seen, they're quite hands-on. In fact, they do things like building schools, community halls, clubhouses. They've got clinics on site that they administered the COVID vaccination, for example. So I think they're very much aware, because they're probably in an industry that there's quite a bit of spotlight, that they've got to go, a bit further than than some other companies, some other industries, in order to be seen to be doing the right thing. And as well, on the research that I've done over the last couple of months, they seem to be very transparent. They seem to have to go that extra yard.
So what exactly is palm oil used for then?
Well, it's used in a host of different things, really. It's very difficult, it seems to get through life without using it. It's on the food side, it's used in things like, it's used a lot in processed foods for like pizzas, donuts, chocolate, and then in such things like, deodorant, shampoo, toothpaste, and even lipstick. And I have to say, Paul, that shade really suits you. You should wear it a little bit more often.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So, now, this is just, is that international market? I'm assuming this is a big market. It's not just local, but they have a very strong local market as well, don't they?
Yeah, if you look at the consumers of palm oil in the world, well, let's talk about who produces it, because it's, Indonesia is the far largest producer in the world, 59% of world production. Got Malaysia on 23%, and then Thailand is a distant third with 4%. When it comes to consumers of palm oil, Indonesia themselves used 25%, India 11%, China 7%, other Asia's 24%, Africa 13%, and then the EU just 8%. So, take the UK, it's going to be a very small amount of palm oil, but, it's used around the globe, and it's got a lot of attributes to it. It's the highest yielding vegetable oil in the world. It produces on average 3.3 tons per hectare, versus rapeseed is next at 0.7 tons, sunflower at 0.7 tons, and then soya at 0.4 tons. So you'd need a lot more land to produce just as much oil. And it's also the only vegetable oil that doesn't have to be sown every year. It's a repeat crop. Typically one palm tree lasts 25 years of its useful harvesting life.
So, as part of their sustainability promise, I suppose they're just replanting once the palm tree reaches its end of life.
Yeah, I believe that a palm peaks at about 10 years, and then it's got a life of about 25, and then it's progressively replaced. And it's a crop that can be harvested all the year round. So that's another thing, and it's hardy to weather and pests. So it's a formidable product against what it's competed against. It's apparently it makes spreads more spreadable. It's got a longer shelf life. It's stable in high temperatures, and it gives food a crispy and crunchy texture, and is odorless and colourless, so it doesn't impact how the food looks.
Well, okay. The reason I was asking about the markets was because I know that you went recently to an AGM for another company, and you sent me a photograph that you'd taken in a pub of a crisp packet that was proudly claiming that they had no palm oil in their crisps. And I've done a bit of Googling on this. Obviously, I'm not an investor, so I thought I'd just look at it from a consumer's point of view. And there does seem to be a sort of a pushback, certainly in America and other Western markets, against products containing palm oil. So how are MP Evans addressing that issue? How's the palm oil industry as a whole addressing those criticisms?
Yeah, well, I think that's where this, of what MP Evans are. They've joined the RSPO in 2005, which is the Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil, and it's all about making palm oil sustainable. And the main thing about that is that it doesn't involve deforestation and any burning. So they can only do as much as they can do. And we've got to acknowledge that this is a major industry for Indonesia and Malaysia. In fact, I believe that in Malaysia they did have palm trees on their banknotes, or some of their banknotes. So yeah, it's a very important industry, and I think they're aware that they've got to tread carefully.
So if you kind of break it down into criticisms, the deforestation is one of them that you just mentioned, and I believe that that's no longer a significant issue because of various bits of legislation that local governments have introduced about slash and burn deforestation. There was an issue of CO2 that I looked at here. Greenpeace are saying they're the third highest emitter of greenhouse gases, and I suppose that's just down to the production process, is it?
Well, I looked on that web on the Greenpeace website, and they claim that, and probably correctly, that Indonesia is the third highest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. But what they fail to point out is that Indonesia got the fourth largest population, so it's not out of kilter with the number of people in Indonesia. It'd be more of a stark statistic if it was like Switzerland or something like that. But it's I think it's got a population of about 250 million people or something like that. It is a big country. So yeah.
The thing that people seem to be protesting about most in respect to the way that palm oil impacts on wildlife is that communities of orangutan, mostly in Borneo and Sumatra, have been displaced. But if companies like MP Evans and the palm oil industry as a whole are addressing these problems and making considerable progress, do you think that boycotting products because they contain palm oil would actually make any difference?
Well, I mean, we live in an imperfect world, Paul, don't we? And there's other trade-offs to make. Obviously, we've got to respect the environment. But look at the people of Indonesia. The GDP per capita in Indonesia is $14,638 per year, and in the UK as an equivalent, it's $55,862. So we can afford to be a little bit more squeamish on these kind of things. Now, I see these industries as going a long way to alleviating poverty, and a lot of use that phrase leveling up in the world. So it's like I say, it's a trade-off. It's not all black and white, and I look at it. It's a business that somebody might as well own, so it might as well be me.
Now, this is the first stock that you've reviewed that might make investors think a little bit more about issues outside of the valuation of the business. But unfortunately, there are no impact-free products or services. So if a company or its products do more good than harm, then I guess that's probably the only metric that investors can use to base their decisions on.
Yeah, and of course, you'll hear occasionally about a sweatshop in Bangladesh employing child labour. Then we don't suddenly stop buying T-shirts, do we? It's a case of bringing those individual culprits to task. You can't just blame a whole industry. I mean, they've said that, again, when you look at it, palm oil seems to be one of the pin-up children of the environmental lobby. Yeah, from time to time, there's been accusations of it being an industry that's used child labour, slave labour, human rights abuses. It's a case of bringing those individual businesses to task, Paul, not just shutting down an entire industry. So I think they're doing as much as they can.
Yet again, I assume that the raft is going to go missing because MP Evans have an upcoming AGM that you've been invited to, I believe. Yes,
timely, the AGM, because it's the 150th anniversary of this business, and they are having this one's taking place at the Mansion House in London, and it's going to be followed by a celebratory lunch. So that's something not to miss, Paul. That was something on my bucket list. So very much looking forward to that. Meeting the directors, and it should be hopefully a good event. So I've registered for that. there's limited spaces. So if any existing shareholders are interested in that, I suggest that they sign up to that as quickly as possible.
And do MP Evans pay dividends?
Yeah, it's something that they're very, very proud of, this. They have a 30-year unbroken record of maintaining or increasing their dividends. And this can become a little bit of an albatross for some businesses, in that they get very, very protective of the dividends, in that they don't want to stop this record. And it results in this kind of smoothing process, in that if they've had a real bumpy year, generally, in my experience, they don't want to stretch themselves too much in case the day comes where they've got to halt that record. So in a sense, they're holding some money back for the next year. That's been my experience. But the dividend this time from MP Evans is up 21.4%. It's 42.5 pence. So it's been more courageous. And if you look at the last few years, they have been ratcheting up this dividend. So it's been a lot more ambitious. But I will, given that they keep trotting out that this long record of maintaining the dividend, they must be confident that this is something to sustain. To use that word, sustainable dividend. So that bodes well for me.
And I believe they've recently made an acquisition as well.
Yeah, this was after the end of the financial year. They've acquired another 2,100 hectares, and that was for $14.3 million. So when you look at the estate that they've got, that was valued at the end of the year. They get it independently valued, and they reckon this is something that they release in every annual report, that the net asset value of the plantations and the mills is equivalent to £14.98, right? So that values each hectare at $20,700 per hectare. So I've done a calculation based on the back of a coconut shell, Paul, and they've been doing some buybacks over the course of the year. The most recent one was at £8.48. So that means that they're buying their own hectareage back at $11,718, if that makes sense, as opposed to $20,700. So it's been cheaper for them to buy their own stock back than looking for acquisitions. Now, this most recent one that I mentioned, that works out at just $6,800 per hectare. So that looks like a bargain. So that looks a little bit of good work on their point. They've been buying back the stock throughout the year in the argument that it's undervalued, and they've cancelled just 0.9% of the stock. So it's not been a massive buyback program, but it will add up, and I think it's a good use of the capital, given that they're in a net cash position.
Okay, and you mentioned that the war in Ukraine had an impact on the situation. How is that likely to change in the future, do you think?
Well, we don't know how long it's going to last for. Those areas are massive suppliers of predominantly, it's a large supplier of vegetable oil. Is the Ukraine? So that's put a spike in the price, and hopefully it get resolved. I imagine if when that happy day comes, that the price of the various oils on the market will come down. But it's got to be remembered that MP Evans themselves are facing increased prices from the same development, in that fertilizer's gone up about 100%, something like that. So, come the end of the war, the oil price will come down, but probably some things like fertilizer will come down as well. So it's not going to be too devastating.
So what's the current world production of palm oil then, and how does MP Evans fit into that?
Right. Well, world production is currently 78.9 million tons, and the prediction is that this is going to increase to between, and these forecasts are always a little bit woolly, between 120 and 156 million tons by 2050. So, that's a big tailwind for this industry. But, MP Evans account for just, 341.7 thousand tonnes of the current 78.9 million. So it really is a minnow. It's a minnow in this massive industry.
And I believe MP Evans has some property in Malaysia as well.
Yeah, this is a historic thing, I think, Paul, in that they've got a 40% minority holding in a company called Bertram Properties in Malaysia. Historically, they have a presence out in Malaysia, and they're obviously junior partners. And in the report, this is valued at $49.3 million. And I think it's that in the long term, they will look to extricate themselves from that at an opportune time and just concentrate on the palm oil.
Right, so it's time for our regular question in a bottle spot. Let's see what's in the bottle today. And this is a question from Elaine Atkinson. That's your missus.
Correct, Paul, yes.
And how did you get the address of the island? That's what I want to know.
Well, I was hoping there would at least be some sanctuary out here.
Yeah, clearly not. She asks, Mark, if you're going to be on that island for some time, don't you think you should tell me a little bit about how to get hold of the money?
Yeah. She left a note on LinkedIn. Perhaps if you're going to be on the island for some considerable time, it may have been a good idea to share the account details with me. And it was actually said in jest, but there's actually a serious point behind that. Elaine's my wife. She describes herself as my long-suffering wife. And generally what you find in relationships, in marriages anyway, between a man and a woman is that, there's one person who manages the money. And more often than not, it is the man. You fall into these roles. I mean, going back from personal experience, in my parents' case, it was my mother. My father used to come home on a Thursday with his buff envelope and hand his wage package over, being a good husband, and she would give him spending money. And he didn't really concern himself with the finances. But when you get into a relationship, you tend to fall into these roles. One person will cut the grass and the other one does the ironing. And it was me, that would just find myself, managing the money. It's not my money; it's her money as much as mine. And over our lives, I'm happy to say she's out earned me on various stages. It's nothing that I've been embarrassed about. It's something that I've been very, very pleased about. So I've been investing her money as well as my own. And really, she's not had any real interest in it. And you get to the stage in life where you start thinking, look, there's probably less time in front of me than there is behind me. And I really need to start bringing Elaine into the kind of the workings of what I'm up to. In that, if you look to an actuary, the odds would be on me going before her. So what we do now, obviously I have to talk to her over the course of a month what's going on, but every month I take a valuation of the portfolio and all our finances, and it's just a snapshot. And then when I've put that together, we have a sit down and we actually have a meeting. We actually have a meeting of, look, this is where we are versus last month. This is where we are versus a year ago. Again, it's just a snapshot. This is what I've done. This is what I'm thinking. And, she knows where all the money is, because, with my broker, for example, it's all done online, and there's no annual statement comes through. So if I was to get knocked over with a steamroller, then she might be at a little bit of a miss as to, to find out where everything is. So, this meeting lasted for about, 5 minutes tops, right? And, just as she's about to get up out of her chair and do something else she'd much rather do, I just said to her, come the day, if you ever confused what to do, what do you do? And the answer says, the stock phrase, do nothing. If you're not sure what to do, then, don't make any reckless decisions. Just take the cash off the portfolio. Any kind of corporate events, just go along with them and you'll probably do fine. It's that kind of light touch approach, Paul.
So, I mean, I'm slightly confused by a couple of things in that. I mean, is she supposed to get in touch with your broker?
Yeah. I mean, it's important that a partner knows. I mean, it's incumbent on two people really. The one who's like running the money to share that information, and the other person to show an interest as well. It's a bit like when we go on holiday. It's generally incumbent upon me to order the drinks or the meals or whatever, because I speak Italian and I speak a little bit of French, and she could probably do it as well. But she says, "Well, you do it better than me." Well, that doesn't mean you don't have to try. So I brought a lot more into the tent, shall we say? And like I say, that monthly meeting that we have, where we actually sit, because we say we'll get round to it sometime. The fact is, on the value, when we've done the valuation, it's a good opportunity to say, right, this is where we're up to. Literally, it takes about 5 minutes. 5 minutes, 12 times a year, that's an hour, and that's time well spent. And
would she know what to do? I mean, would she be able to log into your online brokerage account and maintain that account going forwards? I mean, are there any issues about transferring that money?
No, it'd have to be transferred off. She'd have to be transferred over to her in time. But at least if she knows where it all is, because people do lose touch with, where the money is. I mean, it's only just this week that my last outlying pension, which is a final salary pension, which was this was a business I was with 30 years ago, and the other money purchase pensions, I grouped them all together and transferred those into Vanguard and just their index trackers. But they've sent out their annual newsletter that I've read, and it's not a massive scheme. It's got about 1,100 members, something like that. But just on the very back page, they've got a section of member tracing, and they've got about 30 names of people that they've lost touch with. They don't know their details. So these people have all probably got either their dependents or their widows or widowers have got money, but they've probably lost touch with where it is, and it's easily done. If you move house a couple of times, or they don't know where to find you, so it's important that you're kept in touch with where your money is.
So would the money in your brokerage account have to be transferred into her name in some way, shape, or form? Yeah.
As long as
the broker would do that for you.
Yeah, but the main concern is that she knows where it is, Paul. That she knows where it is, and ultimately she knows how to manage it in some small way.
Yeah, so she can log in. She knows how to log into. What you're saying is, for other investors who may have a partner who would be left in that situation of dealing with your investments, that they do at least know how to log into your online trading online account, and they know the details of your broker and how to get in touch.
Or at least that they know the account details. To write a letter and say, I'm very sad to say that Mark has fallen away. He's gone away. Now, I mean, there's no guarantee that I'm going to go first before Elaine, and this is a two-way street. So I now have a recipe for fish pie and Bakewell tart, Paul.
Yeah, would you believe it? One desert island, one palm tree, one coconut, and it lands on your head.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, that's all for this episode. We hope that you enjoyed it. Please remember, the content is for information only, and it is not financial advice. If you would like to pop a question into a bottle for Mark, just post your question in the comments, and hopefully it'll reach the island in time for the next episode. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.